Hey y'all, we're gonna start our morning off this morning with fresh veggies. We're gonna cook green beans, turnip greens, fried squash, and cornbread. Let's get to cooking. So if you've never cooked fresh turnip greens before, I rinse mine at least 3 times. I do them once individual and break the stems if they need it off, but other than that, I rinse it 3 times. So this is probably my second time. You can see the dirt over here in the sink. This is from a garden. This is real food. So it's gonna be dirty. So I've already washed them individually. I still see dirt coming off. So I'm just gonna fill it up again and do it again. 3 times usually does it. Sometimes you might have to do 4. Pull out any that are yellow like that. And then if I miss any stems, like I see several I haven't got here, I'll do them as I put them in. But these are so young and tender, I think they will be fine. So I'm gonna rinse these one more time. See how that water looks, and it's clear and clean. What I failed to show you is this morning, before I even got dressed, I soaked these turnip greens in salt water. That makes any bugs that might be on them float to the top. Then I kind of pick through individually just to pick out the bad ones. So as I told you, now I'm just rinsing them over and over again till I get them clean. And there we go. So what I'm doing is I've got towels laid out with a pad under it just to soak up the moisture. It's not necessary, but oops, I just poured water out. It does have a lot of moisture in it, but we're gonna cook it in water, so it really don't matter. Now, if these were big turnip greens and not young and tender, you'd have to break off a lot of stems because you don't want those tough stems in your turnip greens. But I'm not having to do many at all because these are so fresh and young and tender. So we like to put bacon in ours. I didn't have any thawed out, so I had to go down to the freezer and I've let it sit out just a few minutes. They're still partially frozen, but they'll be good enough to fry in this pan just to season our turnip greens. I'm putting 3 pieces of bacon in here and I'm just gonna fry this up. I'm waiting on my bacon to fry, which I hear it sizzling. I've got just a few green beans here. These are Blue Lake green beans. I'm gonna wash them just like I did the turnip greens. So now I salt all my washes. I put salt or vinegar in them. Most of the time it's salt. Fruits a lot I do vinegar. And I'm just gonna let those soak for a few minutes. Now as you can see, there's a getting brown. So once I turn these over and they look like this, I'm gonna turn my eye down and I'm gonna get ready to put my turnip greens in. At this point is I just go ahead and add a couple of cups of water. And that water can be heating up. I do not drain that bacon. That is my seasoning for the turnip greens. I'm just placing these in here a few at a time and they'll cook down. Now I hear my water boiling good, so I'm just kind of pressing these down and letting them cook in the water. If you need more water, add more water. I like to keep mine covered with water. Now we're back to our green beans. Remember, they were soaking in salt water for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to rinse them off several times to get them good and clean. Now I'm going to add the last of my turnip greens. I bet you never thought that many turnip greens would go in the pan. Well, there is a few more. I'm going to add them too. That's all we have. I can't cook turnip greens without thinking of my sweet best friend, Eddie Goss. He's gone to be with the Lord and his wife. So they love turnip greens. He would grow them. He would share them. He would cook them. He was a great cook. I can't help but think of him. Now I'm putting new clean towels. They may be stained, but they're clean towels. back on top of where I had the turnip greens, and I'm gonna take my green beans and just lay them on the towels where it can soak up the liquid. And I'm just gonna spread them out. We're back over here at the turnip greens. I want you to look. Could you even imagine that that big pile of turnip greens is what's in this pan? They cook down so much. Now we're gonna season our turnip greens with salt and pepper. Just do that to taste. And now we just stir these up and let them cook a little bit more. You want these to cook until they're soft and tender. It doesn't take long to cook these. It takes more time to prep them to cook than it does to cook them. Now we're back to the green beans, and I'm just moving them around a little bit. I want them dry before I break them. Our squash has also been soaking in salt water, and all I'm doing here is just rinsing the salt water off, checking for bad spots as I go. Now I'm just placing the green beans in a bowl and getting ready to break them. These are Blue Lake beans. They are stringless. That's why I love them. The only reason I have a knife is if I see a bad place on them. So for anybody that hasn't strung beans, Blue Lake is the place you want to start. I love them. I think they're delicious. I like others too. These are easy. It's relaxing to do. Here I'm just showing a close-up of me breaking the beans. For someone that maybe has not done this before, all you do is break the ends off. If they have a string, you pull the string off. If it has a bad place, you cut it off, and then you break your beans, getting them ready to cook. Y'all may not believe this, but before I married Sweet Hunter, almost 45 years ago, I had never broke a bean in my life, and now we do it every summer. I cannot tell you how many bushel of beans me and him have broke. I wanted to show you one more little trick I do for my turnip greens. So they've been cooking about 30 or 40 minutes. Did I just spill that? And I put just a little bit of sugar in it. So I've got my green beans broke. See, it was just enough for us. That'll be enough for 2 meals for us though. I'm gonna show you how I cook my green beans. I keep a jar of bacon grease in my refrigerator, and all I'm doing is putting about a spoonful in the bottom of my pan to season my green beans. You can also fry your bacon if you'd like. Now while the grease is melting, I go ahead and pour in some water while my pan's heating up. You want to have enough water to cover your beans. You can also use chicken broth. That's very good too. I'm going to cover my green beans with water. Now while I'm waiting on my beans to come to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and slice up my squash to fry. All you do is cut the ends off and then slice it or cut it into chunks, however you want to do it. Now this is optional, but I love to pour just a little bit of buttermilk on my squash. And then I just stir it around, getting as much of the squash wet that I can. I really wanted to taste of these turnip greens and see how they were, so I had to let a bite cool before I did. I do not like big forks, and here I've got a big fork. That is delicious. So these are done. They don't need to cook anymore. I'm going to set them aside and put the lid on them. My green beans are coming up to a boil. Y'all have a favorite eye? I have a favorite eye, and it's this. On every one of my stoves, everywhere I go, it's the first one on the front on the right-hand side. Do y'all do that? So now we're back to our squash, and what I'm doing here is I'm putting cornmeal on my squash. I put it pretty thick. I want it to get cornmeal on every piece, so then I stir it up. I learned how to fry squash from Sweet Hunter's granny. Now we'll move on to my green beans. You can see my turnip greens back here. Oh my goodness, they're delicious. The green beans are boiling. This will probably take about 45 minutes for them to cook, and I want to cook them down dry. I read a quote the other day, and I've mentioned this before, that cooking in your kitchen is like an orchestra playing. You can use Crisco or you can use oil. I'm just covering the bottom of the pan with oil, and I'm going to heat it up. Now you can see me just putting the squash in the iron skillet. I just kind of pile it up, shaking the excess cornmeal off of the squash. Do y'all hear the orchestra playing? I do. I start my squash on top of the stove, and I just cook it till it's good and brown. Now I like to go ahead and salt this before I turn it and pepper it. And I do that on both sides. We're moving on to our cornbread now. The link will be in the description box. I am not showing you the recipe on this because I've already done a video. But this is Vicky's cornbread, Eddie's wife, which was my best friend. And we can't do a country meal without mentioning them. It's delicious. Now all I'm doing here is turning this squash. You can see it's getting brown. And then I'm going to salt and pepper it one more time. Now what you're looking for here is just how brown you want it. How brown you like your squash. I'll probably turn this a couple of more times. Now this is about as brown as I like it, and here's the key. Sweet Hunter's granny always finished her squash off in the oven. It's going to get browner in the oven, but that is the key to good squash. I put this squash right beside my cornbread. When my cornbread's done, my squash is done. So the cornbread's ready, the squash is ready, I've already been into it. The green beans are ready, I've already been into it. And the turnip greens are done. Good country meal. Thank y'all for joining us. Thank you for watching. Y'all go cook something.